Alright everyone, I almost wanted to make a snap video last night because everything was blowing up in Twitter's face with regards to Project Veritas, because they came out and they've been releasing footage. They did a sort of sting-style journalism on Twitter. And they found out, for instance, that they store perpetually even deleted stuff. That's not honestly surprising because that's pretty standard for large tech firms. Like, the government's obviously already leaned on them. For in case of criminal cases or whatever, they want all the evidence to be there. It's all archived. It's all automatic. There's really not a whole lot. Even these smaller, even some alt-tech sites probably do that, by the way. It's not surprising. It's not even really that big a problem. But then they exposed something very interesting, which was at least one senior engineer there was saying, oh yeah, you know, all of your DMs, they're in my server. And yeah, I see your dick pics, and I go through them. You know, basically, I could send them out to people and stuff. Now, we're not as bad as, and this was funny, said, we're not as bad as Facebook and Google, but yeah, we've got a lot of stuff, a lot of info. And it turns out that they've been selling personal info. And Twitter hasn't addressed this to third parties as a form of income, which I'm not 100% sure in the sense of DMs is actually allowed under their own TOS, like their own terms of service. I don't believe allude to the fact that any private correspondence on Twitter would be bundled in with correspondence to be sent, you know, as, you know, whether identifiable or not to third parties for sale, basically. I'm not sure that their TOS actually allows them to do that. Like, that would be potentially a big legal problem for Twitter if they haven't disclosed the fact that they're actually doing that in correspondence that, by and large, fits under the right to privacy in the most explicit of terms, because those companies may take that and give it to governments in exchange for money. Has anyone thought about the fact that big tech might be used as a middleman by governments in order to spy on people? Like, let's say that the site itself, you know, wouldn't says, no, we would never give your info to the government. Like Apple has said, well, no, we wouldn't give user data without a proper warrant. It'd have to be significant enough, you know, we don't care if you smoke weed, I guess, or whatever. We're not going to send anything to the U.S. government. But what if they take user data, bundle it up, sell it to some other group of people? You know, the government's the one actually paying them for it. And then that third party is meant to give it to the U.S. government or any other government. I wouldn't be surprised. I would be more surprised if that weren't happening. Take the most possibly corrupt and draconian misuse of personal data you can think about. It's probably happening with all the big tech firms. Probably because there's profit motive for the firm, there's a legal motive and a surveillance-related motive for governments. Not just, I'm not indicating, well, you know, Uncle Sam wants to go through your dirty laundry. No, I think all governments want to go through your dirty laundry. Private corporations want to go through it to target ads to you, to sell you stuff. To manipulate your mind, to learn more about people. And anthropologists have been hired for years and years by big corporations to help them understand the ins and outs of the human society and human culture enough to be able to target people with propaganda, which is what advertising really is. It would be surprising if these things weren't happening. The worst part is, though, that it could allow a Twitter employee, in theory, to blackmail someone with their info, or not blackmail, but like leak info. You know, here's a political candidate. They happen not to like them. Then just something about them rubs them the wrong way. So they just leak some of their info. And you think people who handle data like that, who have some experience with computers, might be able to cover their ass in doing so. And even if they get caught out, maybe they fall on their own sword. Maybe they're like, maybe they actually believe the Nazi stuff about somebody. And they decide, well, I need to take this person out. I need to take down this Trump acolyte. I need to take Mike Pence's personal correspondence and send it to WikiLeaks or something. We could see something like that happen. And oddly enough, around the same time as this happening, just a few days before these big revelations, I wonder if even O'Keefe knows this. I saw several middle, you know, sort of a missing link media figures on the left, of course, browbeating Veritas, saying, oh, O'Keefe is like, you know, he's a felon, he's a horrible person, he's a fraud. I saw them appearing to do a little bit of poisoning the well only a couple of days before this new slew of revelations. It's becoming a little bit odd when these people also appear to be working with a larger nexus of groups. I'm not going to mention names here, but I think you can probably make an educated guess, that appears to tie into some pretty heavy hitters within the leftist side of politics. I wonder if I've stumbled upon something more significant here. See, unfortunately, it would require infiltration in order to actually get the true skinny. That's a little bit harder than just putting 2 and 2 together and having a hunch. So fucking somebody else can do that shit. You know, other people can do investigative journalism. I do analysis. But Veritas exposes it, and then Twitter says, no, we don't, it's not part of our policy for employees to go through your DMs. You know, unless there's like a criminal case, we get a warrant, yeah, you know, we'll disclose it. Otherwise, no. Our employees don't go through your private messages. We go through the public stuff, and if something's flagged as like, you know, terroristic or something, then we might go through your DMs, otherwise you have nothing to worry about. That's not, though, the point that's being made. That's not the expose here in regards to this specific employee either. What's being said is that an employee, without the TOS enabling them to do so, without a policy telling them to do so, is still able to do that. That's the basic problem. It's a lack of control over apparently Twitter's own employees that are tasked with storing and going through info as prescribed by them that are then enabled to do more. We saw this, by the way. Private corporations, generally speaking, people, you know, they don't necessarily trust them any more than they would governments, right? Or government bureaus, like an IRS or something. Okay, that's granted. That's pretty obvious. The NSA was caught out at the height of the Snowden revelations. Intel agents there were using the surveillance apparatus to spy on loved ones, friends, and exes, putting in, you know, love INT as a code to do this. This was a hushed up story. It was completely steamrolled by other stories that were less worrying. I wonder why that happened. They were using it for their own personal business and vendettas, which is absolutely a breach of the U.S. Constitution, should have resulted in their immediate firing and never apparently did. If a government agency with the supposedly hardened controls and strictures in place can't make sure that its employees are not doing that, how much more would Twitter lack that ability? Like Jack is the president of the United States. This needs to be answered to by Twitter. Look, when the employee says, oddly enough, well, we're not as draconian, we're not as creepy as like Facebook and Google, but we know a lot of stuff about people, that's actually, it's pretty worrying that that would be said. Because you work for Facebook and Google. Everyone right now is fixated primarily on them, like Zuckerberg, the experimental almost Generation 3 synth that just isn't quite passing as a human being yet, gathering people's intel. But we've known for years that they gather and sell people's intel on Facebook. It's their primary income source. Not getting that money from advertising revenue at this point. Now, he's only keeping afloat by bundling your bullshit and selling it to the third world countries, probably. Tin horn dictators who want to hack your data and send you phishing links. That's what Zuckerberg likes to do. Twitter apparently does the same thing. The problem is, Twitter for years claimed, no, we don't shadow ban. No, we would never sell this particular type of data. No, we would never, our employees would never be allowed to go through your DMs or whatever. And it turns out that this is all a total fucking lie. Well, that should worry people. You know, people shouldn't be so flippant about the security of their own data, trusting very personal information to these corporations. There are some that I consider to be potentially more trustworthy than others. I would trust alt tech more than big tech. I would trust, honestly, I'm going to say this flat out, I would trust Google more with personal data than like Facebook or Twitter. which should concern people. Trust me, when Google is the trustworthy one, there's something deeply wrong, I think. You know, YouTube, an absolute hardened fortress for your personal data when compared to Zuckerberg's, hideous creation, or Jack's bullshit propaganda apparatus that shadow bans people and spends several years claiming that it doesn't. It's crazy. My fundamental takeaway was that Twitter's response to this totally skirts the actual central issue. They don't even want to address it. See, they don't want to lie because they're probably terrified Veritas could confirm that they're actually lying through their teeth and saying anything directly countermanding, hey, yeah, employees occasionally go through your DMs. What they say instead is, no, absolutely, we do not tell our employees to do that. That's not the question. The question is, can they do that? Is the data there, and are they physically capable, with routine, they type away on their keyboard, they can access someone's DMs. If that is in fact the case, there will be cases where that information is compromised. It is innate. It's automatic. It's going to happen, and in the long span of time, it would probably, I would think, result in a mass leak that probably compromises most of your user base. The fact that we haven't seen this so far from any of the big tech firms isn't much consolation when you consider the fact that in the long span it's almost inevitable. At some point, some employee screws up, some manager presses the wrong button, and a bunch of shit is compromised. The wrong person is hired for just the wrong position. It turns out they're a spy, essentially. Oh, I'm going to fuck the U.S. economy because I have 100 million U.S. users' data. I have all their DMs. I can compile this into a searchable database, dump it online. Pretty soon, I've ended 1 million marriages. I've broken up 1 million friendships. I've caused people to get fired from their jobs. I've caused people to go to prison. Oh, it would fuck up the whole U.S. economy. The president would have to probably come out and say, okay, I'm declaring a proclamation. Anyone, under this, shut the fuck up. No, we're not sending anyone to prison unless it's like a really, really bad felony that's in this data. You could have a really shit hits the fan style situation. It's larger than just the breach of privacy. It goes to an issue of national security. I wonder if this has been considered. By the way, that is another fairly compelling reason to relegate these into public utilities and involve the Pentagon in hardening these defenses to make sure that that doesn't happen. It is a fairly good argument for the same. Now, do I as an individual necessarily trust the government much more than I would trust Twitter to guard personal data? Not really, okay. But it could be helpful. Then you get the issue of propaganda from the government as opposed to a bunch of bullshit algorithms manipulating shit from Twitter. Because Twitter does that. Twitter will suppress, it is proven. Twitter suppresses hashtags it doesn't like. It suppresses people that it doesn't like. It suppresses literally certain styles of speech that it doesn't like. Like, I guess if you talk like a redneck, according to Twitter's machines, its algorithms and AI systems, it will shadow ban some of that content. I wonder why it would possibly do. I wonder what the political predilections of people working in the higher up positions at Twitter could possibly be. I'm sure that they're totally unbiased. They don't see themselves as arbiters of a national conversation. Of course they do. It's innate. Again, you got a massive tech firm that controls an inordinate proportion of all human communication. It's going to manipulate that communication in accordance with what it wants. Money and power. Derp. It's just the way that it works. It's human inclination. Render them as public utilities and ban all the algorithmic manipulation on these big sites, and you wouldn't have this problem. By the way, you could exonerate them from censoring merely offensive style material. They'd save a lot of money. They'd be more efficient. Wouldn't that be wonderful? It'd be just simply great. So I would love to see Twitter actually respond to the fundamental central premise that's being put forward, which is that it is possible for abuse to occur, and thus if you use your brain, you'll figure out, yeah, abuse is occurring and will occur. Or are they going to keep deflecting and say, well, that's not our official policy. We don't tell our employees to go through your DMs, only the public info, yeah, we can go through it, we can bundle it, whatever. We tell you that in our TOS, but we don't go through the DMs on a routine basis. Okay? Can it happen? Of course it can, which is exactly why they won't answer the question. They're not going to talk about it. They're not going to give us the time of day. That's about all. Peace out.